All right, folks. Ryan Neal, CEO of Blueprint Technologies, live from the Blueprint Lounge at Data and AI Summit 2025. Sitting down with Andrew Psaltis, newly fledged entrepreneur, but he's been with us. He's an OG with Blueprint for a long time, and we've been working together. So tell us about Terrain.
Yeah, so thanks for asking. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Ryan. So I really appreciate it. So started a new company called Terrain, ROI Intelligence. Really about how do you help customers and enterprises understand the ROI of any of their IT investments. So I look at things here, it's just fascinating of like, how do you understand the value of a subscription for Databricks, right? There's obviously tremendous value, but how do you quantify that and tie that back to business objectives and business goals? And then you start thinking about even things with like Lakebase of, now how do you think about transferring data and what's that ROI? So started this after seeing just this huge gap of, there's a lot of investment, a lot of excitement in technology, but how does it fundamentally go back to that business problem and making sure it's tied back to a business strategy?
Yeah, it's really interesting that your background is heavily in communication and helping data professionals translate their value to the business, right?
Right.
What made you jump into the entrepreneurship side to be able to create this product?
Yeah, so I've had a run at the entrepreneur side a couple of times.
Yeah.
And then just keep iterating on it. And then I think, after leaving the corporate world before, just saw this gap. And like you said, a lot of it started as, how do you teach? And how do you help executives understand AI? Started a podcast about like demystifying AI. And really, how do you connect that friction between business and IT?
Yeah.
So all through, I've seen over the decades of, there's always this disconnect between business and IT. And you and I have talked about this, and I've been on the engineering side, on the sales side, I've been on both sides of all these businesses, and always seen this friction. And it's usually not the technology that's the problem, but it's the communication understanding.
Yep.
So as it kind of morphed and continued, I landed in the ROI space, really just looking, I've always been fanatical about optimization and speed, as you know, doing stuff in streaming, but really driven by, how do you solve the business problem? So as I've seen that, it started to become really natural to go, the way I could maybe get people to talk is through numbers.
Yeah.
Where the executive may not know what is an EC2 instance, what is a Lakebase, what is a DBU, just like the IT person may have no idea what EBITDA really means.
Yeah.
But how do you get them to talk to each other?
Yep.
Which, in my mind, ends up being about these numbers and have that conversation about what are we driving for the business from IT, not just resume-driven development.
Well, it's pretty cool. Like the problem you're trying to solve is the same one for our Lakehouse Optimizer. That the reason why we built it is the same reason why Andrew built Terrain. Is you have either the CEO or the CFO persona that's trying to understand the numbers behind tech decisions. And they don't necessarily are really deep in the tech, and so that marriage of the information on one side is really tough to marry up with information on the other side. How are you actually advising C-level executives to think about this, and then how does Terrain fit into that equation?
Yeah, so ask them to think about it from really understanding that whole cost, really being able to do it from the planning and strategy of where are these key business objectives that you have, what do those ROI calculations look like, what are the data sources that you need to be able to then really measure it and look and to understand it. And at the same time, educating the other side from the IT of just because you get a budget doesn't mean that you spend it.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sure you've had these conversations. I've had these shocking conversations of asking an IT leader of how is this project connected back to the business, and I get the response of, well, I get a budget. And you're like, no.
Exactly.
But how does it connect?
Yeah.
So it's that conversation of back and forth. Some of it is an AI education as to what's possible, but then helping them understand, here's where those costs are.
Yeah.
From then the Terrain side, it would have it so that you could come up with and use any of your ROI formulas that you want, similar to what you would do in Excel, which is what people are often using.
Yeah.
How do you match that to data?
So Data and AI Summit 2025, it's the biggest one ever, 22,000 people plus, sold out again. And there's like not just the amount of people, but the amount of innovation and the amount of cool stuff that's here that we haven't even heard about or Chuck really dived into is unprecedented, and it keeps improving every single year. You've been a technologist for a couple decades now on all different types of platforms, all different types of tech. As you walk around Data and Summit, like what's the coolest thing you've seen? What have you been most impressed with?
So I'd have to say probably the coolest booth is seeing Adobe over there. I don't think I've seen anything helicopter-ish actually on an expo floor. So that's good.
Tell them for the freeway, what did you actually see?
That's kind of cool, right? But I think just the number of vendors that are here across all these different ways to help customers really leverage AI, leverage data, get someone on the platform, I think has been just pretty eye-opening. Listening to the keynote this morning, it certainly helps me kind of plan our roadmap and educate things as to where do we need to help customers really understand the value that they're getting from all these technologies that they're seeing. Because it's a lot, right? And it's a lot of stuff that's moving super fast. Just fascinating. So I think from the AI things, I mean, obviously what you guys are doing with Lakehouse Optimizer is amazing. The announcements this morning with Databricks, the agentic stuff that they're doing, to be able to build apps and really to have an understanding about the guardrails you need to put around this stuff. So I love the idea of the human in the loop part of it, which seems like that's where things need to be for a while. So I'd say that it's been a fantastic event so far.
Cool. Well, we're glad to have you. Anybody who wants to reach out to the industry and hear more, how would they get in touch with you?
Easy, just Andrew at trainintelligence.com, trainrointelligence.com. Easy way, or find me on LinkedIn.
Cool. Love it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.